I'm pretty excited. Tonight I'm talking about river paddleboarding to a sold-out 100-chair venue in support of the Coalition for the Deschutes River. So at Tumalo Creek tonight, talking about my introduction to river paddleboarding and focusing on one expedition, the Owyhee. Let's go do this.
Paul is now one of the faces of stand-up paddleboarding, especially on rivers. He's a photographer, an athlete, a filmmaker, a vlogger now. He really helps share passion for the sport, and he's been exploring every corner of Oregon, including the Owyhee River, which is one of my favorite rivers. So he's going to tell us a little bit about his adventures, and hopefully really focusing on the Owyhee River. Paul?
Thanks so much. When I was first looking at places to paddle in Oregon, the Owyhee kept on appearing. Is it possible to run? You have such a small, narrow window of opportunity. If it's going to run, it's probably going to be in early spring. People had been running sections of the Owyhee on a paddleboard. I wanted to know if I could do a source to sea. I wanted to know if I could go from the headwaters in the Duck Valley Indian Reservation to at least Rome. So in March of 2016, I enlisted my friend, Tori Pyatt, who's a photographer, to come on my expedition. We're dropped off by my former wife, a beautiful lady who was very supportive and still is, of silly things like this. She dropped us off, and then we had to portage over grassy cow fields into the canyon. Once we were in the canyon, 150 miles, and 9 days later, we were able to go finally meet Mars Shuttle in Rome. The thing about those 150 miles, once you're in it, you're in it. There is no getting out. If you had to hike out of the canyon, you would just end up in the middle of the Great Basin, and where do you go from there? Within the first 6 miles, I had wrapped my paddleboard and it sank. 2 hours later, fortunately, we were able to Z-drag this thing out. The board re-emerged, it's an inflatable paddleboard, and we're able to continue. So the really important thing about any type of expedition is having good gear, good companions, and a lot of fitness, because we portaged a lot. We were able to run class 4 drops that certainly small craft are capable of doing, like this, but we had to walk over class 2 because the board simply wouldn't go over it. Did he land it? That's the question I always get. Did he land it? Of course he did, because he has his board and he's able to go. Notice he had a leash. A lot of people who are boaters think that leashes are very dangerous. If you are a river paddleboarder, you know that it's very dangerous. If there have been any, and there have been, fatalities on the river associated with paddleboarding, it's because of the leash. So having a quick release leash worn above the waist is important. And having proper gear, including a properly worn leash, allows you to do expeditions in a relatively safe and self-contained way. A small craft like a paddleboard is a fantastic way to do the upper Owyhee because of the narrow chutes, all the portages, and you don't need all the things that typical rafters or boaters use. I never was a river person because I was too afraid to roll in a river. With a paddleboard, I could have a big flotation device and I'll go down there. So this type of trip in an amazing landscape is made possible with small craft like a paddleboard, and with the aesthetics of traveling light and fast and leaving very little impact. So unlike the trailers and unlike all the gear that you'll inevitably forget and leave in the backcountry, having all of your gear in a backpack means that all of your gear is important. It's minimalistic. So here is a celebration at the Three Forks Hot Springs. The next section is the most difficult So we were actually able to have a vehicle bring most of our gear down. The middle section has the most technical whitewater, so we actually went without cameras, without gear, but we ran that next middle section and portaged a lot. A 9-day river trip takes its toll, and memories are forever. So that is river paddleboarding from the Owyhee. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you on the river